On 34 and 35, you're using this figure for both problems, but they don't build on one another, so again, I made them into two separate figures. You're told that segments CA and CE are secants intersecting at an external point, which is C. When it asks you to find BA and DC, remember you're finding lengths. We are not finding measures, degree measures. You're finding lengths of arcs here. So we're told in our rounding directions that if it's necessary to round your answer to the nearest tenth. So if it's a terminating decimal, you're not going to round according to these directions. So in number 34, you're given the length of ED, which is the internal part of the secant, to be 9, DC, the external part, to be 6, CB, the external part of the other secant, to be 4, and you're asked to find BA, which is the internal part of that secant. So I'll label that as X since it's our unknown. Since these intersect outside the circle, that's whole times external equal whole times external relationship. So remember, when you go to look at the whole length of the secant, when you're given the two parts, you have to add those together. The 9 plus 6 tells me that whole secant is 15 units long. For the other secant, we have the x and the 4 that are being added together, so that's x plus 4, not 4x. You're not multiplying the parts, you're adding them. So now we can do our whole times external. The whole length of that secant is 15 times the external part, which is 6. The other secant, the whole length is x plus 4 times the external part, which is just 4. So on the left side, when we multiply the 5 times 6, we get 90. On the right side, when we distribute the 4, we get 4x plus 16. So subtracting the 16 from both sides, we get 4x equals 74. And dividing both sides by 4, we get x equals 18.5. So it's already to the nearest tenth, and no rounding was necessary since it terminated. We don't have any units, so it's just 18.5. On number 35, you're given the length of AC, which is the whole length of the secant. So be careful and not to add parts here because you're given the whole length. BC is the external part, EC is the whole length of the other secant, and asked to find DC, the external part. So you don't have to add anything here. You already know the whole lengths. So the whole length of this secant is 12 times the external part, which is x, equals the whole length, which is 15, times the external part, which is 5. So you get 12x equals 75, and when you divide both sides by 12, you get x equals 6.25. We don't need to round 6.25 because it's not necessary. It's a terminating decimal. So your answer is just 6.25.